young Latinos thriving in politics, and we want to talk about how young Latinos can make it to Congress. And for that, we have some amazing staffers who are currently working in Congress, and making sure that policy gets done. But first, I want to give the opportunity to Chuck Rocha, president and founder of Solidarity Strategies, to get some open remarks. Chuck.
Thank you, Roberto, and thank you to my dear sister, Amy, who's helped put this together. And this is a really big deal, and I'm really honored to be in this space, to see all of you who have joined us to talk about diversity and inclusion and the importance of having representation at every level of government. This is a very personal matter for me, and some of the folks you're going to hear from today are leaders on the Hill, leaders in the nonprofit industry, and folks that I've been friends with for 20 years. Amy being the longest standing friend that you will hear from today, who I have known literally half of my life. When you think about Congress and the halls of power, for many, many years, it was dominated by white men. Then you saw an evolution start to having where there's more white women getting in, more people of color. But representation today is still very lacking with Latinos in Congress. Now, I would explain that in several ways, is that we're a newer immigrant population. The average age of a Latino in America is only 26 and a half. But it's really, really important to have diversity, equality, and inclusion in every part and factor in our government, our campaigns, and our policy making, and Amy would say with me, in all of your staffing hirings and in your staffing leadership, because that's where the real decisions are made, and that's where real power is starting to be developed. So I'm honored to be here today. I'm honored to see this conversation take place. I want to welcome you all to be in the safe space to talk about and ask lots of good questions. Amy and Roberto have put together an amazing panel who will have lots of experience. So be jotting down your questions, to ask your questions, and be thinking about the things that we want to talk about when it comes to diversity and inclusion at the congressional level. And I'm really, really honored to be here today and to welcome you part of this PowerPoint, part of this presentation and that we're going to hear from today.
Thanks, Chuck, and thanks, Roberto. I'm going to stay on just for a minute here because I am neither young Latino nor do I work on the Hill, but I am the founder of Gain Power, and I am very passionate about making sure that our political space, our democratic space, our democracy space is much more representative than it currently is. And so a huge part of our mission at Gain Power is to diversify, to demystify, which in my mind means kind of opening up the space, and this conversation is a part of that. To democratize, that also is opening up and making it more accessible. So I'm really honored that we have this amazing panel. Thank you always, Chuck, to you and your team, and Roberto especially, for this panel. Solidarity Strategies does amazing work, and I'm always thrilled to be able to collaborate with you. I'm really appreciative of CHCI for being here today and all your work on the Hill. I just got to say, actually, to all of you who work on the Hill, I stayed up till midnight last night. I so badly wanted to see the vote. I just want to give you credit. I'm almost going to get emotional here because what you do is just so unbelievable. And you're literally putting your lives on the line, which is just crazy right now. And you don't have to talk about that, but I just wanted to give you some real personal appreciation. Like I said, I'm not a Hill person. I'm a campaign and a much more political person. But the reason we do what we do is so that we elect people who do what you do. And so again, I want to appreciate you. And I also actually want to give a shout out to State Farm, who I was thrilled to see sponsoring this. I'm a State Farm customer. And while it's a big company, I have to say, I always feel like I'm dealing with a small business. My State Farm representatives are always great. So I just appreciate them being a sponsor today. So I'm going to jump off, Roberto, and have you bring the panel on. But again, so much gratitude to you all for being here, and gratitude also for the folks who are watching online. It's really important that you see, you can't be what you can't see. That's what I was really trying to get at, right? So, we want to showcase more leadership in important spaces so you see the opportunities that exist. So anyway, with all that said, I'm going to jump away and let the panel take over here.
Thank you, Amy. But before we go to the panel, I want you to bring a special guest. Like Chuck mentioned, Congress has more Latinos working in those halls, but
We've got
It's because of organization CHCI alum.
Roberto's in Puerto Rico, and I
And that's
know.
why we have Marcos. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're just kind of coming in and out a little bit, but tell me who to bring. Oh. I know Roberto's internet is, he's in Puerto Rico, and I was saying he's having a little bit of trouble with it today. So I want to make sure that we jump in. Tell us who to bring on here. We can, it looks like Marco was dropped off. Chuck, why don't we bring the others on, and then we can come back with Marco? I think that will make more sense.
Sure. Marco, you're on
Hi.
mute, brother. Hey,
there
Marco.
we go. Sorry, we're all having tech challenges, it seems like, quite a bit. Sorry to jump in and to delay this panel. I want to get to the real conversation. Amy and Chuck, I think, said a lot of what needs to be said to sort of set up this conversation. The only thing I'll briefly say is, for those who don't know, CHCI is the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. We've actually been around for 43 years trying to help diversify Capitol Hill. So, you know, it's a long slog and an uphill climb. But what we do is develop the next generation of Latino leaders. We help folks get actually internships and fellowships on Capitol Hill, including, by the way, it's important to note, folks who are have DACA status have, through our program, been able to actually work on Capitol Hill. It's one of the only ways that we're able to do that. So we're explicitly trying to sort of change the complexion of Capitol Hill and to provide more folks from our communities into those roles. In fact, you're going to hear from 2 or 3 of our alumni on the panel today who went through our program and who now do, or in the past have worked on Capitol Hill. And so we're just super excited to be partners here. We're also grateful to State Farm, our sponsor, to help facilitate this program. They stand by the work that we do and the work that these great organizations do in order to achieve this same goal. So just really happy to be here, really grateful to be able to partner with such extraordinary organizations like Gain Power and Solidarity Strategies. And we'll turn it over to the panel now for you all to have a real dialogue and to get your questions.
Thank you, Marco.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Jose. It's good to see you also, my friend.
Go ahead and facilitate this as Roberto is getting back online. So thank you, everyone, for joining us. And again, thank you to Gain Power and Solidarity Strategies for inviting CHCI. And also thank you to State Farm for including their continued support in these vital conversations as we invite young folks to come to DC and to really be part of this political power that everyone is trying to build around the Latino community. My name is José Plaza. I have the privilege of serving as the national president for the Alumni Association with CHCI. And I really want to get this going and invite Roberto and Fabiola, who are joining us today, as current staffers on the Hill. And I'll go ahead and introduce Roberto. Roberto Rodriguez is a legislative aide in the Senate Budget Committee under Chairman Bernie Sanders. He has devoted his life to public service. Roberto has a bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Puerto Rico and a master's degree in public administration from GW. He also has served as sergeant in the United States Marine Corps. His Hill experience started in 2016 when he was an intern in Senator Sherrod Brown's office. After the devastation of Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico, Roberto decided to work as a congressional staffer in Senator Gillibrand's office. Some of his goals include being an advocate for marginalized communities and to promote a more equitable society for everyone. Fabiola Pagan Melendez is currently a legislative assistant for Senator Bob Menendez. She handles the senator's Latino and Puerto Rico affairs at his Washington, D.C. office. Prior to this role, Fabiola worked on Senator Menendez's transportation, energy, and environment portfolios. She was a CHCI Public Policy Fellow and completed her fellowship at the House Committee on Natural Resources. Fabiola graduated from the University of Puerto Rico Piedras campus, where she completed her bachelor's in chemistry. Born and raised in Puerto Rico, she's always been passionate about the issues on the island. So let's get started with the conversation. Fabiola and Roberto, thank you for being here with us. We're talking about young Latinos getting to the Hill. And as we talk about the different pathways, it's really important for folks to know how you both got to DC, how you both are thriving on the Capitol. So Fabiola, I want to start with you. Can you tell us a bit about what your trajectory was getting into DC, and if you had the opportunity, would you do it the same way or would you do something different?
Yeah. So thanks so much for, inviting me to this panel. It's very exciting. So yeah, I think I can, kind of give a brief overview on how I accidentally ended up on the Hill. So I, as you mentioned, I did my bachelor's degree in the University of Puerto Rico. And my intention was, I studied chemistry. I never really thought that I was going to get into the world of public policy, much less end up in DC. So I had taken the MCAT. I was, my plan was to fully go to med school. Like that was, my driving force, when I was doing my undergrad. But I remember the very last, the last year I was completing my bachelor's degree, I realized I don't really know if that's what I want to do. So I actually had a friend tell me, that friend was actually tell me that I should apply to CHCI. And, he told me about the fellowship. I looked into it. I ended up applying and, thankfully got accepted into the fellowship and moved to DC that August. So when I showed up in DC, I was like, this is probably going to be a gap year for me before, I apply to med school and do all that kind of stuff. But as soon as I got to the Hill, I kind of realized I want to stay here. Like, this is just so exciting. This is the kind of work that is important to me, and that, I was really lucky that the office I was in had a really diverse group. So I could kind of see myself growing. So I ended up staying. And after my fellowship ended, I applied for a job and got one after, searching in the middle of COVID. And I would do it again. I think it was, as old ladies kind of say, like, the Lord works in mysterious ways. And I really do believe that. So yeah, really, I would do it again. Yeah.
Fantastic. And bless all the old ladies who have all the wisdom. Roberto, same question for you. Your path was a little bit different. You didn't have an organization like CHCI providing that guidance, but how did you get to the Hill, and would you do it again, or would you do something differently?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you for hosting this panel. I'm very lucky to share this panel with amazing talent. And I thank you for the question. My experience on the Hill started in 2016 when I was an intern in the Córdoba Fernos program. It is a program that is sponsored by the Puerto Rican legislature. And I had the opportunity to work as an intern for Senator Sherrod Brown. And I was always very interested in politics. My interest in politics and in public service in general came from my grandfather. My grandfather, Enrique Rodriguez, is someone who I admire deeply, is someone who is a dedicated public servant in Puerto Rico. To this day, he's 80 years old and is still working. And he would always chat with me about politics when I was a little kid, and we would always go back and forth on different ideas. So having the opportunity to go to Congress and provide other offices, such as an Ohio office, Senator Brown's office, with a different perspective on how we see things and how we in Puerto Rico see politics was an amazing opportunity. And it was an eye-opener, I would say, for me, but for the office as well, because a lot of offices don't know a lot about the U.S. territories. And that was a very rewarding experience in 2016. And fast forward a year later, after the devastation of Hurricane Maria, I didn't see myself as necessarily coming back, but I also knew that it was a possibility. And I think I'm going to circle back to this later on in the panel, but I reached out to different people that I knew on the Hill, and they pointed me to the right direction, and I ended up working for Senator Gillibrand. It was an amazing experience as well. I spent a year in her office as a staff assistant. I then switched over to Senator Sanders' office, which is the office where I currently work for, now in the budget committee. And for me, it was a coming in full circle, because I have always been an admirer of Senator Sanders for a very long time, and for me to actually work for him was, and it is a true pleasure and a privilege. Worked there since 2019. I got promoted to legislative aide in July of this year, and to answer your question, would I do it all over again? Absolutely. The amount of knowledge I've gained, the exquisite experience I have attained here, the kind and thoughtful people I've met, and the most important part is how my work as a Latino, as a staffer, as a young staffer, and to see how my work has impacted the lives of so many people now with this important reconciliation bill is just unparalleled. So I am more than blessed and privileged to be where I'm at, and I'm excited at the opportunity of speaking to it, because I want more people who look like me, who talk like me, who think like me. I want more people like me and more people like us in this panel being represented and feeling represented in the halls of Congress. So thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you both, and really great responses. I think it's critical for folks that are watching us today and that are thinking of making a jump into DC to come to the Hill, to have this federal engagement. It's really critical for them to understand the pathways to get to DC and how one actually really makes it in DC. And so that actually leads to my next question for the both of you. There's a lot of hype around working for government and working in the halls of Congress. But I wanted to get a sense from you both, like what does your day actually look like? What are the type of roles that you are able to take as a new staffer on the Hill? So can you walk us through, what a day-to-day would be like, and what are the different roles that exist in a congressional office? And Roberto, I'll go back to you, and then we'll go with Fabiola.
Yeah, so a day in my shoes would look like someone who basically follows politics in their personal lives. You wake up, you read the news, see what's out there, what's new, and you digest the information that you get. You take notes of the information. Now, for people that are currently on the Hill, well, we have to attend meetings, make sure that information that we have is discussed with important stakeholders to the priorities that our bosses espouse. We need to make sure that we're tracking legislation, whether that's amendments, whether that's bills, whether that's resolutions, what have you. We need to make sure that we discuss those particular legislation and track it and make sure that it is, if it's something that we are pushing for, that it has a track and it has a path forward. If it's something that we have some disagreements, then we make sure that we raise those disagreements with the appropriate staff, whether that's committee staff or the House side or in the Senate side, reaching out to different allies that we've had in different offices and different committees to get their input as well. And I want to highlight that specific term, stakeholders and communication, because those two terms are important in the work that we do. It's important to make sure that we as staffers have input of people who have a stake in it, who have experience, because we need to make informed decisions to make sure that policies respond to working class Americans. So having that dynamic of going back and forth and listening to others is key to our work. And to respond to the question that you asked about roles that one can hold while on the Hill, the options and the opportunities are endless. Fabiola and I, she said she was a fellow. I was an intern. People start off as staff assistants as well without being interns or fellows, or people can just jump into being legislative correspondents. So the opportunities are endless. But going back to the specifics of it, yes, internships are a way to get your foot in the door and get yourself out there and make yourself known in different offices. Fellowships as well. The same for staff assistant positions, which are administrative positions, usually responding to constituents, their phone calls. Maybe if you're in the district office, you work on casework. Those are the front line people in different offices, which their job, as a previous staff assistant, I can attest, it's pretty hard but very important. Legislative correspondents work in the correspondence that public officials receive. So members of Congress will receive constituent mail, and we need legislative correspondents that respond to that mail. So the opportunities are endless. I would say that if you want to work on the Hill, the Senate has its website, the Senate.gov website. I think that's the best resource that you can get. If you want to reach out and you want to apply for an internship, most of the postings are there. Same with the House side. You will have their postings at the House website as well. But just do your homework, do your research, find out what your local representative is offering in terms of internships or fellowships, and put your name out there. You just never know if you might get selected. So, yeah, that's all I have for now.
Gracias. Fabiola, same question. What does your day look like from start to finish, and how do you prioritize all of the different hats that you have to play in your office?
I really love that question because I don't know what a typical day looks like for me. I think Roberto touched a little bit on it. A large part of our job is, responding to what's going on in Congress. So we're constantly watching the news and, for example, this week in the Senate, it was NDAA. So most of my office's focus and most of what, folks were working on was regarding that. But, I guess a standard day, I have a number of meetings with either, other staffers from other offices, either from the Senate or from the House, people that we partner with, stakeholders. There's probably, memos I have to put together. There's meetings that I have to, like briefings that I go to as well. There's a lot of writing involved when it comes to writing memos and preparing, vote recommendations for my boss and, things of that sort. So it's, I think one of the things that I really enjoy the most about working in Congress is there is no typical day. Like you never know what you're walking into. I've had days where I wake up, I'm like, this is going to be chill. I don't have a lot going on. And then 2 hours in, I get a phone call. It's like, this is happening. We need to put this material together, whatever. So I think that's one of the exciting parts of the job. And, I think Roberto touched a lot on, the pathways to get into the Hill. You could start as an intern, fellow, staff assistant. And as you kind of go up the hierarchy, it gets progressively harder to make that an entry level job, although it's not impossible. So I went from fellow to legislative correspondent in the Senate to LA. So that has been my trajectory. But, you can go the legislative route. So you can go, from staff assistant to LC to LA and, LD, chief of staff, et cetera. That's one route. There's a comms route where you go, I know some people do like staff assistant, press, assistant or digital director to like start going up the ranks to comms director. And then there's a more administrative route to, be like office manager. So there's a lot of different, opportunities, and everyone's job kind of looks really differently depending on who they work for and what committees they're on and, what is, what's important to the constituents of that state or district. So there's a lot of variety. So I think that's a little bit about what my day-to-day looks like. But yeah, I I don't know. So yeah.
No, that's great, and it's actually really insightful on how fast-paced and quickly changing the congressional environment can be. And Fabiola, I'll stay with you. I'm actually really interested in remembering my days as a fellow. I remember I would get lost all the time going to the Rainbow cafeteria, and it was really hard figuring out just how to navigate being on the Hill. Share with us a little bit about how it is that you've managed to stay afloat on the Hill. Who have you been able to rely on as a resource? Are there other organizations? Are there alumni groups? How have you also gotten mentors on the Hill to help you thrive while you're there? Because for a lot of folks, especially coming from Latino communities, this is a whole different world to be on the Hill.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a different ballpark. Oh my God, it's its own kind of, the Hill is kind of its own little town. So, and I must say, I have gotten so lost in the Rayburn basement. I think it was like my second week as a fellow. I could not find an exit. So I was lost literally. And, for some time I was, trying to figure out if I wanted to stay. During my fellowship, I was like, do I want to pursue a career here? Do I not? And I think one of the things that really helped me was the fellowship group that I was in. I think it was a really great support system of people that, wanted to stay on the Hill or quickly realize like, hey, this is not for me. I want to do some other kind of work. I want to go to nonprofits. I want to go to the campaign side, or I just want to do something completely different. So I think that was one of the good support groups. And I think a second part that was really important to me was I've been really lucky that the offices that I've been in are pretty diverse, and we can always improve on diversity, but for congressional standards, I've been surrounded by a lot of Latinos, and my supervisors have been women, and that has been really empowering for me and has made me feel like I have a place here, like I can see myself growing. And I think folks sometimes don't understand how impactful that is. Like, if you don't see someone that really looks like you're like, I can never do that. Or like, it doesn't even cross your mind that you could get to a role of that, level or whatever. So I think those were two big factors for me, as well as connecting with the rest of the Latino staffers that I've talked to. Like it's one of those things where it's really nice to just be like, okay, get on the phone and just quickly speak Spanish and like, just make jokes, and like having that kind of sense of community is so critical. And something that I forgot to mention in the last question is I think people don't understand sometimes that the nature of our job is so people driven. Like, sure, we do policy, we write a lot, like we are liaisons in a lot of senses, but I think the critical part is you have to be good at dealing with people and you have to like it. Because everything that we do is collaboration, negotiations. And if that's not something you don't enjoy, the Hill might not be the place for you. And that's okay. So yeah.
That's actually a really fantastic point to close your piece. I was one of those folks that, after being on the Hill through the CHCA fellowship, I realized that the Hill wasn't for me, and that's okay. But the skill set that was learned was really critical. And so I think that's really important for folks watching, that you have to take on these challenges to figure out what is the right trajectory, what is the right career path for you. But it's important that for those that are on the Hill and do want to pursue, a career, specifically doing this type of work, that you have those right supports and the right outlet to seek help. So Roberto, same question for you. How have you managed on the Hill in terms of finding a support network, finding, your own cohort within the Hill to really continue succeeding in your roles?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question. I remember when I got my first job on the Hill back in 2018, that I felt lost, that I felt that I didn't know anybody there, that a lot of people didn't look like me, and I was asking this exact same question, and talking to different people, I met different people, but they introduced me to the Congressional Hispanic Staff Association, for example, and through that staff association, I was able to meet a bunch of great people that are Latinos, that are diverse, that they felt like me, they looked like me, and they understood my concerns about diversity on the Hill. And so finding that support group and finding those people that are willing to support you, that are willing to help you, and to help you navigate the intricacies and the dynamics of Congress was crucial and continues to be crucial to the work that I do. But also, they are a support that helps me in a mental capacity as well, to keep myself surrounded by people who think like me, who look like me, and that understand the struggles that Latinos like us go through every single day. So I couldn't have done it without the support of that staff association. But also, I think you mentioned about mentors, and that is something that is very, very important for young staffers to have. And so my best piece of advice when someone is looking for mentors is to find an issue area, pick one that interests you, or that you study and you have very specific or niche knowledge on, and just go to the first briefing that they post, and or something related to that issue area that you are interested in, and meet people, get out of your comfort zone, get out there, talk, but not only on the issue areas, but also if you read the room and think it's appropriate, on a personal level as well, because that's how you make deeper connections on the Hill, and how you make deeper connections around here, and make sure that they know what you want. And nothing is as great as being honest and transparent about your intentions. And I remember when I met one of my mentors now, and I was straight up, I was very honest with them, like, hey, look, this is your resume. I know that you did X, Y, and Z. I want to do X, Y, and Z as well. How did you do it? Any tips that you have? Can you connect me with other people? What readings should I be, reading up on in the next couple of weeks or days? And when someone sees that person that is curious, that young person who has a motivation, it has that drive, that correct mindset, and that mentality of succeeding against all odds, they're going to notice, and they will help you out. The likelihood of them helping you out is pretty high. So I would say that having mentors, having a support group, and having a network of people that you feel comfortable with is crucial to the work that we do here.
That's great. And I like that line, succeeding against all odds. So we talked a bit about, kind of that culture shock when you're on the Hill, and really finding your place and finding mentors. One of the other big shocks I remember in moving to DC was how expensive it is. And realizing that, thankfully I went to DC with CHCI, and we have a full paid, stipend, we got transportation assistance. But how did you all manage, once you left your fellowships or your internships, realized, what the salary range is on the Hill, and then having to survive in the city. How did you all manage, and how do you make ends meet as new staffers on the Hill? Fabiola, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question. And one of the reasons I feel really strongly that Congress needs to pay its junior staff a lot better, because it's just really hard to, star at the Hill when you're getting paid really poorly in a really expensive city. So one of my shocks, I was really lucky that I was able to come to DC with CHCI, with the fellowship that provided me a stipend. But something, and this is, I think, a very unique problem, since I came from Puerto Rico, I didn't factor in, I had to pay federal taxes. So my budget was like completely thrown off. I remember calling my mom being like, I don't think I'll have enough money to pay for my rent. Like, I'm like freaking out. And she was like, we'll figure it out. But, I think it's really challenging, especially, and I'll just talk about the fellowship. A lot of folks from the fellowship are coming straight out of school, or, are coming from areas that are outside of DC. So it's a huge shock to just kind of figure out like what your budget looks like, what even your schedule. It's completely different, especially when you work at the Hill, where, what are work hours? It's so flexible. Like, you could come in at 9 and some days you leave at 5, some days you leave at 10. So it's really challenging in that sense. And, I just wanted to quickly say something else about, the shock of being in Congress. I remember the first time I went to the Senate, my very first thought was, people here are really tall. And then I realized, no, they're just mostly white men. So I think that was definitely a shock for me. But yeah, I think it's about learning how to manage your finances, and Congress, needs to do better in paying its junior staff if it wants to increase its diversity. And I think I'm happy CHCI does a fellowship and other programs, because that's one of the main barriers to getting people that look like us, stay in Congress. So.
Great, and thank you for highlighting that gender piece. I think it's the reality of politics that it tends to be male dominated, but it's also dominated by white males. And so it's really important for organizations like CHCI, Gain Power, and Solidarity Strategies in the political realm that they occupy, that we're certain not only to diversify the field for Latinos, but ensuring that folks that identify as Latinas also have an equal entry point into the Hill. So Roberto, same question for you. How did you manage living in DC and being a junior staffer when you started back in 2018?
Yeah, well, it was brutal. I'm not gonna lie. I have to be very honest and transparent about it. I remember when I got my first paycheck, I could have sworn that there was a mistake in my pay stub. I was like, there's no way this is my paycheck. And I have to be very, very honest, and that might be unsettling for some people, but it's the reality. Fabiola mentioned this, and I completely agree. Congress needs to pay its interns, and they need higher wages for junior staffers. And if you go around different offices and you look at how many people of color are in junior staff positions, you will see that the majority of the people of color are indeed in junior staff positions. So these lower paid positions are most likely being held by people of color. And that is absurd. That is something that cannot continue to happen. And we need to continue the fight and support different organizations and support different initiatives to make sure that we have increased pay for congressional staffers, especially junior staffers. Because in the end, the effect that it has is that when junior staffers cannot pay their rent, when they cannot pay their basic needs, they will leave the Hill. And so we will continue to have male-dominated, white-dominated positions of power, and that is not reflective of this country. And that will not be reflective of the policies that are enacted by Congress. So it's not just me being mad or sad about the salary that I used to have. Thankfully, I make a good living now, thanks to the great office that I work for. But the reality is that if we want to retain good, experienced, diverse candidates and diverse staffers, we need to pay them more, because it's really competitive out here, and it's very appealing for younger people who want to do good, who want to enact policies that enhance and improve the quality of living of the people they represent, or the people back in their district. Then we need to make sure that they can, pay their rent, pay their groceries, pay their electricity bill, and so on and so forth. And at the end, I would mention, how to manage my finances, because that is a very important aspect of, anybody's, day-to-day living. It's important that everybody, maintains savings accounts and making sure that they don't overspend in this month, and so on and so forth. But I want to stress the first part of my answer as the biggest culprit for why we don't have a lot of diversity in Congress.
No, that's such a critical point. And I remember when we started our fellowship with CHCI, both Fabiola and I have mentioned that CHCI, provides a full stipend to come to DC. But a lot of folks actually didn't know, coming fresh out of college, that you needed to have a credit score and you needed to have payment stubs in order to apply for rent. A lot of folks really struggled with that. And so it's really important, as we have this conversation, that folks really ask those questions, not just about how do I get on the Hill, but what needs to happen before you even get to DC in order to survive. A question came in from one of the viewers specifically asking about what was the most challenging part in you applying for roles in Congress. And so I want to ask that question of the both of you, in terms of what was the application process? Was it easy? Were you able to just get a referral and get an interview, or what were the steps that you had to take to be considered for the roles that you first took on? And I'll start with you, Fabiola.
Yeah. So it was not easy. It really was not the best. And I think I started looking for a job in Congress, probably one of the worst moments. I was right when COVID started. So our fellowship ended May 2020. And since April 2020, I've been looking for a job. And at that point, a lot of offices weren't hiring because they just didn't know how long the pandemic was going to, take. They're still figuring out work from home. So, because there are so many of these factors still up in the air, there's such limited openings. And I'd be lying if I said that it was probably one of the most grueling things I've done. I don't even know how many applications I sent out. I think I had an Excel. I think I applied to over 30 jobs, not only on the Hill, but anywhere. And, it was a constant hustle of talking to people that I knew and be like, hey, do you know anyone in this office? What can you tell me about them? And I went through various interviews in very different offices. But again, I think it all worked out after a couple months. I was looking for a job for a couple months on the Hill. And to be honest, towards the end of my job search, I remember I was still paying rent in DC. So I was in Puerto Rico during the pandemic. So I was just so unwell because I was I don't know if this is, if it's not going to work out for me, I need to start doing something else. But, I think not only the job search is grueling, but once you're in the Hill, I think it's important to mention, especially for, women and people of color, advocating for yourself when it comes to your salary and bonuses and, raises is a huge challenge. And I think I'll speak for myself. It's not something that is comfortable. Like, I think it's just weird to just be like, hello, like I would like, given my work, like I think I deserve more money. Like, I think that whole conversation is just like so uncomfortable, but it's so important. And I think it's important for, again, women and people of color and other minorities to have these conversations and prepare for these conversations, so we can get the money that we deserve for the work that we're doing. And I think, getting a community of people that have these experiences and can help you with that is really critical to surviving on the Hill, both financially and professionally.
Roberto, same question for you.
Could you repeat that question one more time?
Yeah, in terms of, what were some of the challenges in landing your first role? Was it easy? Was it, you talked a lot about like that mentorship and knowing like who to go after in terms of the right questions and right connections. I want to hear a bit about the process of how I was applying for jobs on the Hill.
Yeah, I want to start off by saying this to anybody who is currently applying for a job on the Hill, that it is challenging, and the process might be daunting sometimes. You might feel like you got it, and at the end you don't get the job that you wanted, and that's okay. Literally, I've been here for almost 4 years, and when I started applying for a job on the Hill, I can't even count the number of applications that I sent out, and I always tell this to everybody who asks me this specific question. It doesn't matter how many times you get a no on a specific job application. It only takes one yes. With one yes, you will get a job on the Hill, and that's what matters. So keeping that in mind, I think, is a very important aspect of the job search on the Hill. And I mentioned that because having a positive attitude and a positive mentality, is sometimes very hard, but it's very rewarding. And it's very important to not give up, because if you have a pessimistic mentality when you apply to jobs as competitive, as coveted as these positions are, then you're going to give up, and then you're just going to throw in the towel, and that's it. And another person who doesn't have the experience that you do, the background that you do, will get the job. So people of color, women, minorities, they need to prepare for a long and complicated at times process, sometimes multiple interviews, sometimes with writing tests, with very on the spot questions, but you need to be prepared and with a positive mentality that will take you places. And I can't stress enough how important it is to understand the dynamics of Congress, and how Congress can be very difficult to manage sometimes. And that is part of the reason why I'm here, why I want to stay in Congress, why I want to continue to support people of color and minorities to come work in Congress, because we need it. We need bright young people to work in positions of power that will ultimately reflect and push for the policies that we need and that will ultimately benefit our communities.
Great. One other question that I had for you all. So we've talked a bit about CHCI being, one of the mediums that young Latinos can get into DC. We know that Solidarity Strategies does a lot of work with political campaigns. So that's another opportunity for folks to get involved in local or national campaigns and then make their way into DC. Gain Power as well as CHCI have job banks, that folks can look into. But what would you recommend for folks that are, at home in Puerto Rico or watching in Iowa that don't have access to these fellowships or have that political entry point, that we were all able to leverage? How would you recommend that they get started if they wanted to go to the Hill? Anyone can take it. Yeah.
I'm just thinking about my job search. There's a good amount of resources, and that's not to say it's still going to be a hustle. But so one of the ones that was really helpful for me was CHASA, the Congressional Hispanic Staff Association. They were really great with, they send out job postings, they help you with your resume. They have their own job listings. Like, it was so helpful to, be on those listservs. Not only CHASA, but the Senate Diversity Initiative was amazing. Like, Lorenzo and his team are fantastic. And I remember, they were really helpful in my job search and would, send me job postings as well. I'm trying to think. There's a lot of, I think it's tommanatos.com. That's also, they have a lot of job postings there as well. And I think a big part is I think it's so uncomfortable, but like, it has to be done. It's part of Congress. You can cold email people and just be like, hey, I'm some random not some random person, but like, hi, like I'm from Puerto Rico. I went to the same university as you. Like, we grew up in the same place. Like, I would love to get coffee with you and like chat about how you got on the Hill and start building that network. That's so critical. And I think it's one of those things that I heard a lot about it when I was starting in CHCI, like networking is so important. I was like, that sounds kind of weird. Like, I don't think it's that important. It's critical. Like, networking is so important to like who you never know who. I met people in passing in my fellowship that I never thought I was going to talk to again. And then I realized, oh my God, this job opening is in that office. And like, I had a good conversation with them during this random happy hour. Like, I think that is the kind of nature of the Hill. So I would really point people to those kind of resources and to expand their network as well.
Roberto, any insight on your end?
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Fabiola already mentioned. And I think I briefly touched upon on what I'm about to say. And it's basically just get out of your comfort zone, Sometimes, I'm going to throw myself on this example. My first language, the language that I think on is Spanish. And I always have that in mind. And I'm also very conscious of how I might come across, or if I'm thinking too much of the word and I can't think of the word. But that's something that you need to practice. And that's something that practice makes perfection. So if anybody feels the same way, I understand. I'm there with you. And what I'm saying is, you need to make sure that you know what you want, and go get it. Be engaged. Literally, just right now, if you're interested in opportunities on a specific office, Google that person, Congressman X, Y, and Z. Look that person up in their website. All member of Congresses have their own website. Look at their phone number. Call them. Literally call them. Whether that's to register your opinion, to make sure that they are tracking a specific piece of legislation, or if there's an opening in their office. You just never know. And you can cold call them or cold email them, as Fabiola mentioned, and be like, hey, I'm interested in politics. I have, experience on X, Y, and Z issues. And this is my resume. Do you have, is there a date to apply for your internship? They might say no, but they might say yes. And that's a perfect way to start your search for your way on the Hill. And so, like I said, there's also the Senate and House websites that you can look for information on different openings. But I would just rely on being engaged. And the reason I mentioned that is because that mindset, that mentality of being engaged and being proactive on the things that you want is a very important skill that you're going to need going forward on your path on the Hill. So why not start working on that skill right now?
Great. So I know we only have about 4 minutes left. So I wanted to close on a positive because I know we've talked a lot about the hustle to get on the Hill and really finding space and validating your identity in what can be a very white male dominated space. So I wanted to hear from you, like, what is the one positive thing that keeps you waking up and showing up to work every day? What's the one thing you look forward to? Be it in terms of your office, be it in terms of the impact that your office is doing. What keeps you showing up to work day after day? Fabiola, I'll start with you.
I think it's a couple things. I think I really love my team. Like, I think my office is fantastic, and I love waking up and working with the people that I work for. So, and for the boss that I work for, I think that that's something that keeps me going. But I think it's just, and I feel like since my new job change, I keep on going back to the word surreal. It's been so surreal to be in Congress. I just would have never imagined I would have been in a job like this, much less doing the kind of work that I'm doing. So I work on Latino and Puerto Rico issues, which is like, this is for the longest time. And I think my driving force for, in my career, I've always seen it as, I really want to impact my community at the island in Puerto Rico and, the larger Latino community. And to be able to do that is just a privilege and an honor. And I think that's what keeps me going, and seeing what else we can accomplish and what things we can move forward. And, there's never a shortage of challenges in Congress. So there's always like a new hurdle to go and try to overcome. So I think that's it's the secret sauce.
Fantastic. Roberto, in 1 minute, what's your positive highlight of the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a great team of colleagues and a great network of people that I work closely with, whether that's in my office or in different offices, and I surround myself around them. So keeping a great network has been great, not only for my career, but also for my mental health, especially in these unprecedented times. But also a very sharp and very keen sense of duty to public service. As I mentioned, that has been instilled in me throughout many years, and having the chance to being an active agent of change for good is something that I value and treasure a lot. And lastly, but I couldn't end this without mentioning this important aspect, is that I work for someone who I deeply admire. Waking up every day knowing that I work for someone as a champion for working class people, such as Senator Sanders, is an honor for me, and that's something that I will treasure for the rest of my life.
Great, thank you. Well, we're at time, Roberto, Fabiola. A pleasure getting to speak with you all today. I'm certain folks that are watching have learned a lot from your experience. And we wish you the best as you continue your journey on the Hill. What will come, I think, is exciting for both your commitments and your passion to the work that you do. And I'm excited that you get to work in progressive offices on progressive issues and for the people of Puerto Rico and the mainland. And I want to take a minute to thank Amy with Gain Power, Chuck with Solidarity Strategies, Marco Davis, president of CHCI, and obviously our partners at State Farm. So thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend and happy holidays.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.